everything with the requisite amount of magical voices. So thank you all for joining ACRL's Distance Learning Section discussion group for today's presentation and workshop, Show and Tell, Cool Tools for Distance Library Services. My name is Laureen Cantwell. I'm the Distance Services Librarian at Colorado Mesa University, way out on the far west side of Colorado near Utah. And I am a member of the Distance Learning Section Discussion Group Committee that brings you this presentation and workshop today. Okay, so today's session will begin with a series of lightning round talks. Presenters will each begin by introducing themselves and then giving 5 to 8 minute presentations on their respective topics. Please notice that we do have a giant hashtag up on the screen right now. Not only do we invite you to use it and participate in the conversation, we also have a committee member who's going to be monitoring it and communicating and having fun with you all during this presentation. And on top of that, we're actually looking to put together a Storify after this workshop is over. At the conclusion of the presentations, we will be moved into breakout sessions. In each breakout session, a different topic will be discussed. A moderator in each breakout room will have guiding questions to facilitate discussion. During this time, you can use the chat box or a microphone to participate in the discussion. We will be in breakout rooms for around 30 minutes, after which we will all return to the main room and one member from each breakout room will share what was discussed. Any information that is generated within the breakout sessions will be saved in a Google Doc. The Google Doc will be made available along with the recorded session on the DLS website. And as I noticed before, if you would like to follow along and continue this discussion on Twitter, please use hashtag DLS Show and Tell. We hope to have additional time for questions and further discussion at the end of this 90-minute session. At the conclusion of the session, we will ask you to complete our evaluation form and let us know what you thought of the event. And that is about it. I don't think I'm missing anything. So let's go ahead and have our presenters introduce themselves. I think it may be simplest if they introduce as they are getting their presentation started.
I'm sorry, Lorraine, were you going to announce the order of the presentations? Do you have the order of the presentations? Okay, so I'm Tina. Does everybody hear me, hopefully? I'm going to jump in here a minute. The first presenter is Matthew. So Matthew, if you want to get us started, and take it away, Matthew.
Hi, yes. I'm just trying to load my presentation here. It's supposed to be here in the documents. I'm having a hard time locating it.
Matthew, do you know what the name of your presentation is?
Yeah, it's interactive online library instruction. It's labeled as it starts with DLS cool tools.
Okay, I'm not seeing that Elois has uploaded it. Oh, looks like it's coming up now.
Excellent. All right, perfect. All right, so hi everyone. My name is Matt LeBrake, and I'm the online library director at Berkeley College. Over the last few years in this role, I've had the opportunity to work with a variety of e-learning authoring tools in an effort to provide our distance learners with quality, interactive online library instruction. So I found that embedding an engaging learning object into an online course leads to a better achievement of learning outcomes, increased student satisfaction, and a greater level of participation in my online discussion boards. Additionally, as the demand for embedded library instruction outgrows the staff we have available to support, these learning objects can be used as a standalone instructional tool, eliminating the need for a librarian to be present in that course. So this kind of instructional design can range from embedding assessment into a presentation to reinforce a point, to adding hotspots in your video requiring students to click to progress, and developing truly gamified learning objects where students click, hover, drag, drop, explore, and engage with the content. So I'm going to start by showing you an example of an interactive learning tutorial I created using Camtasia Studio to support an entry-level business course. So here I used Camtasia to embed hotspots and assessment into my instructional video, ultimately leading to the improvement of the students' scores on the research assignment. So by uploading the tutorial to Camtasia's hosting solution, screencast.com, I was able to embed it right in the LibGuide as shown here, while leaving the interactive functionality intact. So in this screenshot, you can see how I'm explaining how to do a basic search in ProQuest. And in order to progress, the student has to click where I want them to in the presentation. So by requiring students to interact with a video, I can be sure they're paying attention while reinforcing important directions. Here are a couple more screenshots exemplifying the use of hotspots in this tutorial. Once again, I provide a tip or direction, and then the student must follow along by clicking the screen in the same place they would have to if navigating in the databases. The tutorial also contains built-in assessment, reinforcing certain concepts as the student watches, and once again requiring them to participate. Camtasia also allows for a table of contents to be created and embedded into the tutorial, allowing easy navigation to particular points in the video. Also, hotspots can link out of the video tutorial, opening selected resources in a separate tab within your browser. So while the embedded assessment's goal is for reinforcement, there's also a short quiz at the end of the tutorial allowing me for me to collect some data. So there is an option to collect the data from the embedded assessment through the learning management system. However, personally, I like to build my quizzes in SurveyMonkey and link out to them. So SurveyMonkey has some excellent data visualization tools built in, and it's very easy to look at the aggregated results in an easy to measure way. So when I first rolled out this tutorial, I used this data to find where students were still having difficulties and made changes to the content to emphasize the concepts they were missing. Oh, skipped one here. Oh, so in an ideal scenario, I'll assign the video a week prior to a mandatory library-facilitated discussion board. The students learn the material conceptually in 1 week, and then the discussion board forces them to apply what they learned in relation to their final paper. The real meat of this prompt here is highlighted, and here I ask students to describe their experience using the databases, talk about their challenges, or give tips for their classmates. And based on the responses in this section, I'm able to really see where they're having difficulties and guide as needed. So here's some data I gathered when first rolling out this instructional effort. Note I created this rubric to evaluate the students' responses to my discussion board prompt. The spring term data shows student results when using a non-interactive PowerPoint along with the discussion board. The summer term data shows student results from the first iteration of this video with some limited interactivity, while the fall term data shows my results with a fully interactive instructional experience, including embedded assessment. Moreover, student responses in the discussion board show me they really get it. The feedback they unintentionally leave through their writing demonstrates increased learning and engagement. So after proving the value of interactive instruction through Camtasia, I recently requested a license to the much more comprehensive and pricier e-authoring tool, Articulate Storyline. So there's a pretty steep learning curve with this tool, but it takes interactivity to a whole new level. Articulate functionality allows me to create buttons and then program those buttons to trigger commands. So in this visual you see here, students click on each database to learn more about it. In these visuals you see here, you'll see I've broken a process into bite-sized steps that need to be viewed individually rather than just showing a static screencast. After clicking through the 5 steps, students can check their understanding or open a new tab to practice what they've learned in our learning management system. Here's an example of some built-in assessment using Articulate. Either answer will give students feedback as appropriate. Here's another example. This one's a drag and drop activity. Students are required to put the steps in order to proceed, and steps placed incorrectly will snap back to their original location. Here's another example of an embedded learning activity with feedback. And this tutorial ends by linking out of the learning object to pre-selected resources, including our knowledge base and live chat service. In this visual, you'll see a storyboard for a much more comprehensive Articulate piece I'm working on. You'll see the database access tutorial is just one module within this much more robust learning object, and this is a screenshot from the back end of Storyline. My goal here is to make learning non-linear. There are multiple modules to choose from, and students can complete them in any order they choose. So I'm really excited about how this new piece is turning out and really seeing the potential to create truly gamified experiences out of information literacy instruction. And this drag and drop scenario-based activity you're looking at now, students have to help the story's protagonist organize her notes. And in this one last example, you'll see the students are asked to determine, to help another student determine which industries her companies are a part of. All right, so before I wrap up, let me point out a free authoring tool for those of you just getting started with online instructional design. Office Mix is a PowerPoint add-on that will allow you to add interactivity, multimedia, and assessment right into your existing PowerPoint presentations. This tool is really easy to use, and I highly recommend it as a starting point for those of you who are interested in making your instruction more interactive. In this screenshot, you'll see how Office Mix functionality is available as a tab in PowerPoint, just like the animations and transitions tabs that most of you are already likely familiar with. So I've showed you 3 different e-learning authoring tools, and as with most technology, the more you can do with it, the more it costs. So Office Mix is free, while an educator license for Camtasia runs about $179, while a single Articulate license will cost you about $700 with the educator discount. So thank you, everyone, and please don't hesitate to email me with any questions, and I'll also be available in the Creating Learning Objects breakout room following these presentations.
Thank you, Matt. I think next up is Lynne. So Lynne, you're going to get your presentation ready.
Hi, everyone. Yes, I'm looking to pull up my presentation. I didn't see it earlier either, so I'm wondering if I might need some help.
Lynne, have you gone into the share my screen box?
Right, I'm looking at the uploaded files and I don't see anything there at this moment.
Okay. Do you have your presentation available as a PowerPoint? You can upload that now or share it on your screen. Okay.
I'm doing that right now.
Great.
If I had a nice singing voice, I'd try and fill in here, but I really don't, so hopefully it'll go quickly.
One, just bear with us for a moment. Looks like Lois is typing in a hint for us right now. So bear with us for just a moment.
Okay.
So someone's asking, Lynne, if you can go ahead and introduce yourself while that's uploading.
Sure. So I'm Lynne Deacon. I'm from Seattle University. I'm the Director of Public Services and Coordinator of our Learning Commons Partnership. And the project I'm going to talk about today is one I did with my colleague, Rebecca Bliquet. And unfortunately, she wasn't able to join us today, so I'm representing our work.
Name of your presentation?
It's called Going the Distance.
The other option is we could, if Carrie's is ready, I mean, can we, Elois, can we open up Carrie's and come back? Oh, never mind. Okay. All right.
I think I found
Those
it.
are the magic
so
words to make it
made
happen.
it happen.
Okay, there we go.
All right, thank you everyone. I'll go ahead and get started. So yeah, Lynne from Seattle University, and we wanted to talk about a professional development effort that we did at our library to support both librarians and our campus colleagues related to the teaching and outreach we're doing online. So the goals of our project were, first, to train librarians on the use of our institutional learning management system. So for us, that's Canvas, as well as the deeper pedagogical best practices and instructional design theory when teaching in hybrid and online classes. We definitely wanted to create campus-wide partnerships by better collaborating with and marketing library offerings, both in our specific liaison areas as well as other campus units that do this work online. And then we wanted to increasingly promote librarians as online education experts and collaborators, and want to be known as a go-to resource for integrating research skills and information literacy in the curriculum. So before I dive into the fundamentals of our plan, I just wanted to emphasize how critical partnership is to this success. So creating those alliances with the relevant campus players in online ed, because they provide invaluable support resources for our professional development, and they also help promote the library and library resources. So it's a really strong reciprocal relationship, and that just creates more resources and opportunities for everyone. So what did we do? There were 4 pieces to our development effort, and I want to highlight them quickly and then I'll talk about them in more detail. So phase 1 is that upper left-hand corner. Let me go back. And that you see in blue, and that was the initial training we did on topics for librarians. Phases 2 and 3 in aqua and yellow focused on outreach of our offerings in Canvas, both campus-wide and in individual liaison areas. And then the lower quadrant with the orange is the longer-term plan to create that more embedded presence for librarians and information literacy. So in phase 1, we held a series of Canvas trainings where librarians learned LMS fundamentals and then played with the ways to apply various features to specific types of instructional activities. So using the quiz feature to create a topic-specific module. And we assessed the effectiveness through ongoing feedback, as well as having librarians do a Canvas project where they had to create something in Canvas for use either in a real class or for a liaison area, and report back about the successes and challenges of that. And we also learned pedagogical best practices and instructional design theory through a variety of internal and external trainings, presentations, and workshops. And then I wanted to highlight some of the ways that we have marketed our Canvas offerings. So we have a handout and a LibGuide that help talk about the ways that librarians as well as library resources can be integrated online. And then we've also worked with our partners to establish an embedded presence in Canvas. So that includes having a librarian role in the classroom and labeled as such, and a link to the library's website in the main navigation of our LMS. And from that collaboration, we've been able to embed information literacy in a variety of campuses or departments all over campus. We've developed campus-wide workshops on how to do this integration, and we're consistently invited to present on our work in the annual Canvas Users Forum that we have. So now how do we promote and share these resources? So it's a lot about campus partnerships, and so working with those relative units and personnel to advocate for that visibility of the library and the support for the library presence online. And then at the liaison level, our individual librarians work with faculty and staff to promote information literacy instruction and certainly discipline-specific information literacy. And then our eventual goal is to become known as curriculum experts and collaborators, and this is a phase that we see as unfolding over time through years of outreach and patience and relationship building. So just really quickly, some of our big takeaways are learning from this process so far is the linking to institutional efforts to improve online and hybrid course offerings when possible, and so finding that institutional buy-in and trying to connect to strategic priorities for the institution. Finally, or next, it was important for us to make the professional development of librarians a library-wide priority and not just an individual or small-scale project, and that's going to help us keep momentum going. Also creating a phased plan and trying to be as smart about it as we could, so not trying to do everything all at once, but building it out. And finally, just really remembering and focusing on the skills, not just the tools that we might be using. So what do librarians need to know and be able to do to achieve our ultimate goal, which is being viewed as curriculum resources and experts in the online realm as well. So those are the comments I wanted to make today. If you're interested in learning more about what we did or want to borrow or adapt any of our materials, please use the link in the slide or contact either me or Rebecca, and we'd be happy to talk with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lynn. I think Carrie's up next. Carrie, if you've got your slides ready to go.
Yeah, I also didn't, oh, I didn't see mine, but there they are. Magic. Okay, can everyone hear me? Going with yes. So my name's Carrie Moran. I am from the University of Central Florida, and I am our User Engagement Librarian, which is a title that I made up. And I originally did this presentation with my supervisor, Rachel Mulvihill, who is on vacation today, so she left me here to do it by myself. So for those of you who don't know, very quickly, UCF is the second largest university in the United States. We have over 63,000 students, and our online courses are extremely popular. 36% of all of our courses are delivered in online mixed motor video last year, and 75% of all students here took at least one online course. So do I have, it's not letting me advance my slide. Okay, so I'm here really today to talk about, we have 3 different ways that we teach in the online space at UCF. So where it all kind of began was the traditional embedded librarian model, where there's kind of a relationship between one faculty member or one program and one librarian. And it ranges anything from just monitoring discussion boards, kind of like you see in the picture there, all the way through we have like a nursing program where we have a full library assignment within the course that a librarian grades. The nursing faculty do the rest of it, but the librarian actually hand grades assignments for students and responds to them. So we calculated out, we were asked, to see how much time we were spending there. And after we calculated out how many classes we were embedded in, which was 121 in the last year, and how much time that took, we figured out it's about 80 hours of librarian time a week. So that's definitely our most time-intensive program that we support at UCF. And if we can go to the next slide. Oh, I see it now. Okay, so this is our stats for embedded librarians. So we can see we started in 2001. Which was almost nothing, and we've grown pretty steadily. There was a little dip there in 2010 and 2011 and 12, and we're kind of leveled out where we are now. So we've changed the way we collected statistics, which is why there's nothing reflected past 2012 on this slide. But we did quickly realize that we needed a better way to reach more students just due to our size. So the next solution we came up with was our information literacy modules. So these were made in partnership with the Center for Distributed Learning. So shout out to Lynne's presentation before. I think these partnerships are really key. And there are Canvas, LMS, they run the whole thing. They develop all their in-house software. So we actually built our modules on their in-house software and kind of worked with them as a team. And this project really grew out of our last QEP in 2006, which was focused on information fluency. So we developed a set of 15 modules, and we've since retired a few, but they cover all sorts of topics. You might be able to see there's moving to discipline-specific research, conducting a literature review. Our tutorials on APA and MLA are very popular, and in recent years, if we go to usage, we've definitely seen a spike in that, and I think that's because now there are requirements for attendance in the first week of the semester for online students, so a lot of faculty are using them that way. Our last method is an interactive course that we built in Canvas that's called Introduction to Library Research Strategies. Those are all of the topics that lead you through the course. We use this with our second semester composition course, ENC 1102, and our strategies for success for new students. And basically any student who is enrolled in one of those classes is auto-enrolled in this class here. So it's definitely less time intensive than being fully embedded. It's not as hands-off as the tutorials are because there is some interaction with the librarian, but it's definitely not perfect. So really I just wanted to touch on some things, there's our usage, on how to make it work for you at your institution. So definitely managing the workload. You have to balance between, do you need something that has no mediation, kind of like the tutorials our first presenter was speaking about, or do you have the time or the small campus size to be able to actually be in the course, responding to students, having a hand-graded assignment? You also want to think about the technology that you have. So are you going to be embedded within like your learning management system or somewhere on a website or a LibGuide? I'm a believer that you should meet the students where they are, so getting into their spaces. Look at what your institution provides, what's freely available. Even that could be branching out to like a faculty support center that might help you with video production or something like that. And what technical skills do your librarians have? If someone creates a tutorial and then leaves, someone else on your team going to be able to maintain and update it. And finally, I think it's really important to provide a consistent experience for your students. So, if they have, especially in that nursing program I discussed, we had 5 different librarians working with the 6 or 8 sections of the program. So making sure that we were grading questions in the same way, like using a rubric, communicating with them. We actually keep a tip bank here. It's on a LibGuide that you can pull, just like a how to use APA, or here's the writing center to post to discussion boards once a week, and really using the same jargon as your website and kind of making the whole experience really consistent for your students. 5 to 8 minutes goes a lot faster than you think, so this is my question slide. So if you have any questions, you can email me at carrie.moran@ucf.edu. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. I think Rebecca Greer is up next.
That is me. I will actually be sharing my screen, so once I have permissions, I'll be sharing it with you all. Lovely. Okay, so I believe it's sharing with you all. You'll have to interrupt me if it's not. But my name is Rebecca Greer, and I'll be representing the work Robin Chin-Romer and I did on building asynchronous online workshops at the University of Washington Libraries. We did present this at the Distance Library Services Conference as a contributed paper, so if you're interested, you can read it at the Journal of Library and Information Services in Distance Learning. So to get started, I wanted to introduce to you where this idea came from for an asynchronous online workshop. Robin Chin-Romer, who is the Instructional Design and Educational Outreach Librarian, actually was contacted by the University of Nottingham to see if she'd be willing to be a tutor for effective literature searching, which happens to be a credit-bearing online course which lasts for 5 days. And they needed someone to cover a distribution of hours that they wouldn't be awake for. And so Robin volunteered her time. So from this experience, she had the idea that we could easily do something like this as a workshop, because I'm sure many of you likely have experienced that in your libraries it's very difficult to offer workshops where you don't really earn anything for it necessarily other than your own skills. And so we thought we could maybe try to do this in an online context. So she asked me, which at the time I was an educational outreach specialist, to start doing some research about how we could do a 5-day tutor-supported online workshop around effective literature review. So what I ended up coming up with through a lot of research, which involved talking to librarians in UW libraries, having some face-to-face interviews, a survey, reading the literature, checking out existing online learning objects and websites, were these 4 learning objectives. So defining what a literature review is in the first place, identifying core topics using concept mapping strategies, finding relevant literature, and then demonstrating the techniques for actually constructing a literature review. You may notice that there's not actually creating a literature review on my learning objectives list. We'll get to that later. So then came the actual building part. So this is obviously happening very quickly in 5 minutes, but it took several months in reality. And what we wanted to do is, again, we have 5 days, so we built 5 modules. And you can see a little snippet of what those modules might have looked like. Each one had an overview, resources, activities, and a discussion. We also had on the first day an introduction discussion so that we could have the students introduce themselves. And we also solicited the help of other librarians at UW Libraries to act as online tutors. So that way we could have more than just 1 or 2 people responding to 40 or more students. And then the last thing I wanted to mention here was that everything had to be really consistent in structure so that students could navigate it on their own. Because as I mentioned before, this is asynchronous. There's never a time that we're all online at the same time necessarily. So everything had to be self-navigable. Okay, so these are just going to be a little bit of a view into our first module, which is that defining what a literature review is. So this is a little preview of the overview itself. You can see I moved from those objectives to outcomes, identifying literature review from other types of writing, and describing how content is synthesized, etc. The overview is always meant to be very brief and present the outcomes that the student should expect to learn from that module. In this particular module, we actually put the activity first rather than second. You'll see that second comes the resources in this one. And the reason I did that is I wanted to see what the students already knew about literature reviews by looking at writing samples. And so in those writing samples, they'd have to identify which one they think is a literature review. And then afterwards, they'd be watching a video. In this case, I did use someone else's video. University of Maryland has an excellent video on writing a literature review. And so then they watched this video and moved on to the discussion, which is where the library tutors came involved. And those tutors could respond to the students' observations of their own learning. They could say what they thought the literature review was before watching the video and how it changed after. And so this is where the individualized support came in. Tutors could respond one-on-one to students in the discussion board as it came in. Again, there was no specific time that this was happening. It was just on a first come, first serve. So jumping right into some workshop pros and cons, because I'm sure many of you are curious about that. Of course, being a 5-day asynchronous workshop with no credit-bearing thing to earn, there was attrition. So by the end, we didn't have nearly as many students participating in the discussion boards as we might have thought. Interestingly enough, in our survey, they always appreciated those modules that they didn't participate in the most. So that's just something to take away, that even though they don't participate in the discussion, doesn't mean they're not looking at your content. There was minimal student-to-student interaction, so that was something we'd like to fix in the future. Students desired to create a literature review. Again, that was something that was missing from the overall objectives of this course. And tutors spent more time than expected actually responding to students. And sometimes, in fact, the tutors were online at the same time and didn't know it. And so they had to figure out some scheduling needs after that. The pros, students definitely gained confidence. That came out through our surveys very strongly. That also strengthened relationships with the librarians so that they were able to feel more comfortable to seek out help, whether it's online or in person. And then student workload was reasonable. Again, in the survey, they mentioned that this was something they felt they could accomplish in their own time. This particular workshop gave us lots of data that we could use. Again, I can assess the prior knowledge of students from these discussion boards with literature reviews. And then lastly, there was a lot of collaboration among librarians online, which was excellent. So we're not done. We are continuing on. We've done this with the sciences, music, comparative history of ideas, and data services. I have a feeling I am beyond my time, but if you have questions, I'm looking forward to talking to you in the breakout rooms, and I'll hopefully see you there.
Thank you, Rebecca. I think our next speaker is Carla.
Hello, everyone. My name is Carla Aliman. I will also be sharing my screen. So this should just take a second. All right, if you could please let me know if you can see the screen, that would help me a lot. Okay, great. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about a particular bit of technology that I've started incorporating into online research guides and any sort of online modules, instructions, that kind of thing. So first of all, whenever you have any bit of new instruction you have to create online, there's usually kind of a default to two basic types of technology that you can use. One is screencasting and making videos, and the other one is using screenshots. I noticed when I was looking at a lot of the literature that people are kind of debating which is actually better and which is most effective, and obviously it depends on the situation, but I noticed in Craig and Frisch that screencasting in videos, according to them, was the most effective when compared to face-to-face and sort of static screenshot type of tutorials. And I will specifically say that in both of these examples, they're not talking about interactive video, just standard video. In contrast, though, we have Mester, who had results that were completely the opposite. She actually found that students preferred and did better with those static screenshots and having nicely broken up sort of streams of information that it was easier to navigate through. So I, of course, was online on Tumblr, let's be honest, and I was interested in, by a new bit of technology that's actually really old, and I'm talking about, say, graphics interchange format. That's the GIF, and that is the official pronunciation, but you can feel free to pronounce it any way that you want. So I have found incorporating GIFs very helpful whenever I'm doing any type of step-by-step instructions, particularly demoing functionality. If you really are just want to show someone, this is how you use the catalog. Here you go. I have found that GIFs are very helpful in this. And they essentially are able to incorporate the dynamic nature of video, but also create sort of the chunkification that can happen, the very simple chunkification that can happen with screenshots. So let's actually talk a little bit about your options. I have found that Camtasia is what works best for me in making animated GIFs. And there are a number of options that are online, web apps and that kind of thing that are free. So makeagif.com and GIFmaker are pretty good. There is a Chrome plugin. And if you do have access to the software, though, it tends to be a little bit more expensive, of course. But you may have better quality images. So for example, if you are doing or have access to Camtasia and you want to do this, it's pretty simple. When you have recorded a bit of video, when you're ready to actually produce your image, essentially, there are custom production settings, and under that there is the option to do GIF animation file. And I will admit, the first time I checked Camtasia to see if it was able to even make a GIF, and I saw this, I almost cried in happiness. So just something to keep in mind when you are creating GIFs, you're essentially making them either out of video or screenshots that you sort of compile and mush them together and turn them into an animation. So Camtasia is great when you are working with video. So I have sort of a big project that I'll briefly talk about today. This is a research guide that provides a lot of step-by-step instruction on how to use the library. It's very basic, straightforward, and I'm going to take you to it. One thing to keep in mind about this particular guide is I inherited this guide, general, how to do research type of guide, and it was very theoretical in the beginning, and I still have all of that content. Hopefully you can see the guide now. I decided to add a lot of the practical step-by-step stuff. So we have both the theoretical and some of the practical. And the key thing about this is it is essentially a step-by-step breakdown with screenshots and animated GIFs. This is how to find a dissertation at my library. And you'll notice I start off with a GIF that highlights more dynamic content. I'm not just telling them, click the go button. They actually need to, use a menu. The rest of this guide, or this particular page, is broken down with screenshots, and most of this is not dynamic enough that it would actually need an animated GIF, but it is nice to have kind of obviously this option up here to actually demonstrate the dynamic info. One thing I do want to point out is you'll notice the text right here explains exactly what's happening in the image, so there is never a time when I'm presenting an image and information in that image without also providing it in a text format. So I am going to go back to the presentation now. Hopefully you guys can see my slides again. So just a few quick recommendations if you're using GIFs and you want to incorporate them. I highly recommend that you keep your GIFs small. These are animated images that are supposed to loop indefinitely, and there are options to limit that. But generally, it's about 10 seconds or so. You can go longer if you have interesting creative ways of doing that. But I also recommend that you limit them to about 1 per screen. I think a lot of us, particularly on Tumblr, are used to having a bunch of GIFs at the same time, but they're usually showing stuff that we are familiar with, like images from our favorite TV show, and it's a joke that we know. In contrast, if you want them to actually pay attention to that one GIF, having that one GIF on the screen is generally what I have found to work the best. At the same time, you want to make sure that when you are recording that you're doing a steady pace of motion, and highly recommend using call-outs and making sure you're directing people's gazes where it needs to go. You don't have really a lot of issues with sort of cognitive load in regards to having audio and visual stuff sort of crossing. In this regard, I think it's easy to kind of add captions. Also, as I mentioned earlier, it's really important that you pair whatever images you have with text information. And like I said, I broke down my guide, so it really is very step by step. So I'm able to write descriptions that are very short. That's very helpful. So overall, my general takeaways is that it's a great way to show people and tell people, and it actually allows the students to get information, and they don't actually have to click play. Sometimes, students can be intimidated even by a 1-minute video, and it is kind of a great way to just, send them information, and if they are obviously a visual learner or have visual abilities. So I have presented with this with a fellow librarian, Carla Porter, also at the DLS conference. So you can find our article in the same journal as mentioned earlier. And we also have a LibGuide about it if you want to check that out. So I look forward to any of your questions that you might have in the breakouts or later. Thank you.
Thanks, Carla.
I'm going.
I think
I'll stop sharing.
I think Brandon and Emily are our last presenters, and then we're off to the breakout.
Great. So while Brandon gets our slides up, I'm going to introduce us. Hopefully you guys can hear me. I'm Emily Mitchell. I'm the Webmaster Librarian at SUNY Oswego, and my co-presenter and partner in crime here is Brandon West, who is the Social Sciences Librarian at SUNY Geneseo. And hopefully Brandon has audio and can get us going with an intro.
Hi everyone, can you hear me?
I hear you, Brandon.
Okay. So although every library would benefit from running usability studies, not every library has a dedicated staff available to conduct those studies. Anecdotally, librarians seem to feel incapable of undertaking usability studies for reasons including limited time, budgets, or expertise. We all have other job duties and tight budgets. Plus, it can be tricky to do the test with distance or online learners. So the strategies that we're about to share can be performed in both face-to-face and online settings and can be completed with limited time or budget.
Okay, so since you don't have a lot of time, here are some useful things that you can do if you can only spare a couple of hours.
So many of us have created a survey, and they can be used in your efforts to collect usability data. Surveys can be a good way to seek out people's opinions and perceptions regarding the library website. Since there is no social interaction, unlike some forms of since there is no social interaction unlike some other forms of usability testing, participants may be less inhibited in their answers. It can be helpful to survey distance learners since they are the ones who are often the ones you won't see in the physical library. It is important to figure out whose opinions you want to gather before you distribute your survey. Often college campuses will have a directory of the distance or online learners. There are a few things to consider before you launch your survey. Make sure to avoid using leading questions. For example, do you agree that the library offers quality reference services is a bad question because it leads the survey taker to a preferred answer and also because it's closed-ended. So developing open-ended questions that invite opinions are essential. Also, consider the length of the survey. In terms of usability testing, consider creating short surveys of 3 to 5 questions. Participants will be more likely to complete the survey if it is shorter. Finally, there are technological considerations for how you will distribute the survey, and there are some free software options for online surveys, including SurveyMonkey and Google Forms, among many others.
So another quick thing is called FirstClick Testing. And there is research showing that when someone tries to complete a task, they have about an 86% chance of success if they click in the right direction when they begin the task. If they start down the wrong pathway, though, their chance of success is cut almost by half. What's fantastic about this is that it means you can get a pretty good sense of whether people will succeed at a task, and you can do it really, really quickly. So the easiest setup to run these tests is actually just to print out pictures of the web page that you want to test, write a task on them, and then get people to circle what they would click on to try to complete that task. If you don't have face-to-face access to your users, though, there's also free software you can use. So you should look up Chalkmark, which is put out by Optimal Workshop. The free version is easy to use and gives you some nice visualizations of where people clicked and whether or not it was in the places you wanted them to click. And the images on this slide show you what the user would see and also a heat map with a couple of clicks on it, which is what you would get back from the software.
Some forms of usability testing require more than a few hours. So now we're going to share a couple of examples of usability tests that can be completed if you can spend a few days focusing on it.
So the first of these that we wanted to talk to you guys about is called card sorting. And if you know what content you want on a page or in a navigation, but you're not sure how to organize it, card sorting is for you. Just make up a bunch of index cards with each link or piece of content on its own card and ask people to sort them into whatever categories make sense to them. Then look for patterns in what cards people grouped together and what they called their groups. I usually aim for about 10 or 15 participants just so that there are clear trends that I can act on. Analyzing your data is actually the time-consuming part of this test if you do it with actual index cards. However, if you do it with online card sorting software, several visualizations of your data will be created for you, plus you can reach online students with your usability test. So some free software that will let you do this, again from Optimal Workshop, Optimal Sort. The free version of that lets you test, lets you test up to 30 cards with up to 10 users, but if you have a budget, you can pay to remove those limits. And again, the images on the screen are showing you what the participants would see, and also one of the data visualizations is provided by the software.
So when it comes to usability testing, gathering the patron's actual thoughts and decision-making are usually the most difficult types of data to gather. Think Aloud testing is easy to run and offers data that can be persuasive even to skeptical colleagues. Essentially, in a Think Aloud test, the patron says aloud what they're thinking as they navigate through a series of website tasks. During the test, the librarian keeps quiet except to remind the patron to articulate their thoughts if they happen to go silent. This test may highlight confusing aspects of your website regarding the layout or navigation. While Think Alouds are easy to conduct, there is some advanced legwork to think about that may take a few hours. Since this testing can produce such meaningful data, it is worth the initial investment of time. Typically 3 to 5 Think Aloud tests with your patrons should turn up plenty of fixes you want to make with your library website. You also need to think about how you will recruit your participants. The Think Aloud can be done either in person or online. Before you start testing, do some pilot testing to make sure that you're comfortable guiding participants through the test. By its nature, the Think Aloud test isn't a natural social situation, so building some quick rapport with the patron can make it easier on the both of you. When you're working with distance learners, you can perform the usability test online using conferencing software with a screen sharing ability. Google Hangouts is a great free option. Whatever you choose, make sure you pilot test it ahead of time so you can anticipate or preemptively address technology issues like outdated plugins.
So to kind of conclude this, usability testing should never be a one-and-done kind of a thing. It really needs to be an ongoing effort, and you should do some kind of testing at least once or twice a year. The time you spend running the tests will probably be made up by the time you save in justifying changes to argumentative colleagues. Also, a final thought to keep in mind, don't worry if you can't fix every problem with your website all at once. Fix what you can and plan on running more usability tests and fixing more things later. If you want to if you do save all your data, you'll have a record of patterns and trends, and that will empower you to fix more things and better things the longer you keep testing. So thanks, everyone.
This is Jill Hallam-Miller from the Distance Learning Section Discussion Group Committee. We're going to move right into breakout sessions. This part of the session will not be recorded. I've tried to place everybody into a room based on their preference, but if you didn't indicate a preference in our survey, you're just being assigned to a room. We'll spend about 30 minutes in breakout rooms, and then we'll reconvene in the main room where our moderators are going to really briefly share a few main points, but we'll make all of the material that's generated here available to you online after we have everything finished. So fingers crossed, I'm going to stop the recording and start our breakout sessions, so bear with me for just a moment. This is Jill. I think we should all be back in the main room now. So I think if we can, Moderators, if you wouldn't mind sharing with us, maybe in like I think we have about a minute for each moderator to share maybe a main point or two, and then we'll wrap everything up. And
hi, Jill. It's Tina. I don't know what order you'd like us to go in.
I was hoping Laureen would start. She's the moderator for Breakout Session 1.
Okay, so that's right, I'm in 3. I'll shut up. Okay.
And I forgot I was in 1. Sorry, guys. So I was trying to like take notes, and I'm here now. So we got through 3 of my 5 extremely ambitious questions. So I will give that precursor. Question 1 was basically about, trying to set a baseline for ourselves of active learning techniques that we have tried in an online or distance-based setting and active learning techniques that we want to try. And so I kind of created a little column with a hashtag tried and a column with a hashtag want. And it seemed like there were quite a number of us who were interested in trying Guide on the Side, but some of what came up with that was just the fact that we know we were interested in it, but we maybe haven't had all the time in the world, surprise, surprise, to get into how much effort's required, what the learning curve is, what the IT support and storage support may need to be. All that kind of stuff. So I thought that was really useful. A number of us have tried Camtasia, Jing. Some had done some flipped classroom scenarios. I myself had tried a Jeopardy option, and I sent out a link to that. So I have that in the chat as well. Question 2 turned into more of like what I consider an advice column. So for people who'd been struggling to employ active learning techniques, what do they believe their hurdles are? And for the people who have tried some active learning techniques, or anybody who had suggestions, people could give suggestions as to what they might do. And so time basically is a big concern. So time, the ability to plan and organize, tech and IT support, and another good one I thought was about when you're really trying to teach it to distance. And so we had someone who's going to be teaching to a group in Mumbai. And they got some help from someone who had taught some students from the US, but taught to students who were located in Germany. So one resource there suggested was join.me for a number of reasons, including the chat option, as well as the fact that it's screencasting and it's free. So that was a great suggestion. And then another person was wondering, how to actually, get help from campus and get help to actually come up with what they should do. And so someone suggested perhaps getting in touch with their institution's instructional designers. And then I suggested that if their campus did not have any instructional designers, they might actually consider trying to get some professional development funding to take a Library Juice Academy or a 5-6 week course, something like that, for professional development in actually instructional design, so that they can do some bootstrapping themselves. And then finally, question 3 was looking at buy-in from faculty. So partly that had come up in question 2, which was, how do we get the instructors to seek this out? And so some of the suggestions that came up there included perhaps being attentive at the reference desk and over chat as to assignments that students are routinely having issues with. That could signal an assignment that may need some love on behalf of the library to help improve it, things like that. So yeah, we were just kind of trying to get into as much as we possibly could And there was one person who is a facilitator for their school's professional development for faculty on teaching online. And I thought that that was a great option as well. And yes, I can share the Jeopardy example. You can all play my MassComm Jeopardy game. One of the things I like about it is that all the teams or the players are vegetables, and so you just get to make students be vegetables, you know, as their team. You know, they're potatoes, they're broccoli, you know, whatever, and that's what I call them. And we tend to have a pretty good time. It's a little juvenile,
Okay,
but
great.
it actually does work as a reinforcement activity.
Okay, Laureen, sorry to interrupt, but we only have about 2 minutes left, so I don't really think
Yeah,
we're going to
I'm
have
good.
time to have the other groups share a summary. I think we're going to have to wrap it up, but we are continuing the conversation on Twitter, and actually let me go ahead and share that hashtag again. So please feel free to share. We are going to be sharing the recording with you, as well as any documents that we've generated through this session. Laureen, is there anything else you needed to add to wrap up the session?
No, ma'am.
We'll just ask that everybody go ahead and fill out our evaluation form, and I'm going to put that URL back in the chat box. Share that for you again. Don't forget to join us on Twitter using the hashtag that's showing on the screen right now, and please don't forget to send us your information, your thoughts about the session in the URL that's in the chat box for our evaluation. So thanks everyone for joining us.